Donald Trump and the Fed are about to make a grave mistake that is going to send inflation skyrocketing in flight because, first, it is not under wraps just yet. And on top of it all, will cutting interest rates absolutely explode all markets and send us into an asset bubble like we've never seen before? We're going to get into all of that. But first, let's dive into the global M2 money supply because we've seen that increase, let's say, in the past 2 quarters or this entire year. And the US has kept interest rates at a very high clip. So, this global M2 money supply, we see it continuing to increase as everybody around the globe is cutting interest rates except for the United States. So, why do we have all of this hubbub here about the potential of the US cutting interest rates and happening very, very quickly? Well, it's because Donald Trump and the US have been at odds. There's been essentially talks of this trade talk, right? So these tariffs, all announced by Donald Trump, are as follows right here, where we're seeing the UK, Japan, everywhere, the taco trade. Everybody's saying Trump always chickens out because, well, he's just delayed these tariffs as it stands right now. And so we are looking at the effects of the potential of these tariffs happen. But in the short term, we are seeing inflation still run hot. Now, I, for one, am a proponent of these tariffs, but I think that lowering interest rates, at least initially, could be very, very dangerous for everything here. And now, as we continue to see this, well, Goldman Sachs expects to see 3 consecutive 25-point basis point cuts here starting in September. And if we check out what I literally check with you guys every single live stream, so make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button with the bell notification so you guys know when I'm going live. Well, we're seeing a literal 96% chance that the Fed is going to cut interest rates in September. And that's at least by 25 basis points. Now, what I think is going to be interesting is as we are tracking this, well, is the Fed going to potentially cut by more than 25 basis points? Because it seems like it's almost an inevitability at this point that the Fed will cut interest rates. Now, continuing along the lines with this, well, the stock market has been absolutely humming. 1.1 trillion added to this. Now, looking at this star butt here, gosh, I didn't see that as the first reply, or else maybe I would have pulled up a different tweet there. But we're starting to see these gains and everywhere essentially be all green, all these beautiful green candles here as we are seeing it start to earlier creep up. But it all started here as the Federal Reserve Governor, Adriana Kluger, stepped down from her position. She said it was an honor and a lifetime to serve on the board of governors at the Fed Reserve in her resignation letter. Her resignation will be effective in 4 days, and she will return to her position as a professor at Georgetown University. So, all of this lining up, hey, is the Fed's current interest rate policy actually holding back growth? Now, this is where I'll argue no, because we've seen global M2 money supply absolutely explode because everywhere and their mother is lowering interest rates except for the United States. Now, Trump loves to call him Too Slow Powell and all of these hilarious nicknames. Look, I think the guy has a comedic bone that many or few others have right here. Now, I think that there's something interesting with what we are seeing as we continue to go along through all of this. Now, with this, right, the Fed's foolish interest rate policy is stopping America. Now, their high interest rate, is it suppressing growth while unemployment rises? Well, I think we still have massive amounts of inflation, right? They announced that they're leaving their benchmark rate July 30th. They kept rates at a high level. And unemployment is now starting to go up. And Trump has been essentially pressuring the Fed to continue to keep this, right? So, because Trump has been pressuring the Fed to lower and they haven't done it, well, it's an inevitability at this point that the Fed is going to cut interest rates. It's just a matter of when, right? Because at this time, we have Jerome Powell, who is in power, and he's going to be in power until he's not. And the latest that will happen is in May. So Trump is trying to push for this because he knows that, when we start to see things like this, $1.1 trillion added to the stock market, everybody thinks the economy is great and it's humming along, at least the older generation. The older generation looks at the S&P 500, looks at the stock market, looks at all of these things. But I'm here to tell you that I think we're in a bit of an asset bubble because we've had inflation running hot and, we've still have it at 2.7% as of June of this year. And we'll figure out that July numbers here next week. But in my opinion, the biggest lie the government tells is CPI. If you look at different prices across the globe or across the map, if you exclude food and energy prices, that's what they love to do, exclude essential living things to look at inflation. I don't think we're necessarily under wraps. So it's interesting. Hey, here's the case against the rate cut and why the Fed should hold until 2026. Well, let's take a dive into this, right? They were back in rally mode as investors shifted to Friday's alarming job report, as revisions of the numbers from May and June in particular received blame for the feeling sell-off of Wall Street, right? So they're saying the job numbers aren't great. And hey, we had an inflationary surge in 21 to 23. And that was because of, the cerveza sickness that we had, right? The massive amounts of money printing that happened just during that time. Well, we've seen the inflation come and go from that point, right? We're not going to see that anymore, right? I don't think that's the case. I think what we're going to see is, the M2 money supply already hit a new all-time high last month. And this is not slowing down. Nothing stops this train. The Fed is going to need to continue to print money. Right? We see these official government headlines at 2.7%. And look at this GIF at the top right here, right? According to Govflation, they haven't been tracking it since December of last year. But if you look at this number, in December of last year, the CPI was at 2.9%. Well, the real CPI, according to the data back in 1984, what they used to use as the basket of goods, that was at 10.67%. So we're just under that right now. And when it was at 2.5, it was at 10.3. So we're sitting right around there right now. And you see the discrepancies in these numbers reported as to what we're actually seeing. Right? GDP. We saw a big crash in GDP. Well, that was because they cut a bunch of government spending. They had the Doge. Right? But the government debt, the U.S. debt clock that we are seeing continuing to go up and up and up. Well, that's going to continue to trickle on up. And the debt to GDP ratio we're seeing at is 123.25%. I mean, those are some numbers that are insane. Right? Something that you really just hope to not see at this point. And this $37 trillion, who knows? Maybe by the time I click on this tomorrow, it'll be well past that. Obviously, I'm kidding a little bit, but not really. I mean, the way that these numbers trickle up, it's no wonder you saw the Dixie go above 100 and then crash down below 99 very quickly, right? So this thing is going to continue to hum along. And then as we see the S&P 500, these assets, they love it when they have a weak dollar because everybody just goes into these differences or these assets, right? So if you look at year to date, we got 7%. But if you look at the lows that we had, well, since those lows, the S&P 500 is up 31%. It's one of the best 3-month runs that we've ever had in the S&P 500's history. So watching the way that these assets are exploding, but seeing that, the Fed governors are resigning, seeing that we have a 96% chance that we are going to cut interest rates, it's not necessarily the most encouraging sign because of what we have going on here. So I think that this is going to continue to trickle on up, and I don't think that the end is in sight when it comes to inflation. Even though Donald Trump wants to cut inflation here, and we saw the dollar crash, right? So we got to be cautious, and I'll be keeping a close eye on this. So make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button with the bell notifications. I want to see you guys in the chat blowing it up. Hit that like button, tell a friend to tell a friend. And then also, I did a great vlog of running with the bulls so you guys can get a little peek into my life here. So I'll put it in the chat for those of you who want to check it out. But go ahead and search Running with the Bulls. I survived running with the Bulls barely, and you'll find me. All right. Thank you guys for coming out, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.